Hello and welcome to another week's analysis behind the news. Presidential elections offer a great opportunity to see media bias front and center. Today's mainstream news tends to reflect the opinion columns of old instead of just the facts. A narrative begins as soon as you open a newspaper or click on a news headline. The latest WikiLeaks email dump of the Clinton campaign only added fuel to this media bias fire. Emails reveal rather cozy relationships with mainstream reporters, including coordinating when articles will run, what quotes will be used, and in at least one instance, giving a question to Clinton ahead of a CNN town hall. Trump took the opportunity to sum up Clinton's campaign in a stump speech in Florida. According to the Daily Mail, he said, "These WikiLeaks emails confirm what those of us here today have known all along. Hillary Clinton is the vessel of a corrupt globalist establishment that's raiding our country and surrendering the sovereignty of our nation. This criminal government cartel doesn't recognize borders, but believes in global governance, unlimited immigration, and rule by corporations." Now, when was the last time you heard that coming from a Republican presidential nominee? It's no wonder establishment Republicans are abandoning him, because that description could certainly fit many of them as well. Another instance of media bias comes from the Chicago Tribune with the front page headline, "Over 125,000 complaints against 25,000 police." If you just see the headline, maybe you're left thinking that maybe this applies to the current Chicago police force, and perhaps every single officer has an average of 5 complaints. Yet, according to CNN, Chicago employs just over 12,000 officers. Now, let's read the subhead. It says, "Tribune analysis of 1967 to 2014 city data finds some officers exceeded 100 each." So now we begin to understand a little bit more that this analysis was over a 50-year period. But the online article does not contain that subhead. And if you read a couple paragraphs into the article, they write, "Of the more than 125,000 complaints filed against officers, nearly 90% of the allegations were determined to be false or lacking sufficient evidence." So what are we to make of this? After such a blatantly shocking headline, many may conclude that corruption is rampant and that the Chicago police must be reined in. Yet we learn further into the article that most Chicago police only rack up about 5 complaints in their entire career. The Chicago Fraternity Order of Police President Dean Angelo Sr. said in 2014, "Many of the complaints against officers are baseless and made by gang members and lawbreakers who want revenge on those who arrested them." He said that officers who amass numerous complaints are likely the ones who make the most arrests. Officers that are out there doing police work will get complaints because they're working. They're working police. No one wants their car towed, no one wants their ticket, and no one wants to go to jail. And we also learned later in the article that guilty officers were reprimanded, ranging from suspensions to termination. So what should we be getting out of the article is that, well, basically, the vast majority of complaints are fraudulent. But the Tribune seems to think that it's fit to add smoke where no fire exists. And recall that Mayor of Chicago is Rahm Emanuel, former Chief of Staff for President Obama. He was quoted as saying that we should not waste a serious crisis because it gives us an opportunity to do things we think we could not do before. So after the police shooting of Laquan McDonald in 2015 in Chicago, instead of letting the justice system handle the situation, Rahm created an accountability board to deal with citizen complaints. Creating boards of this type was a favorite tactic of communist activists in the 1960s and 1970s. They sought to gain control over the police, usually on false charges of police brutality. This Chicago task force recommended nearly 80 changes to the way police interact with the public. The mayor said he was implementing about a third of them immediately. Of course, Rahm is doing this amidst a federal investigation from the Department of Justice. And incidentally, it's the same DOJ that 2 weeks ago claimed that background checks and citizenship requirements are hindering police diversity. So apparently we all just need to hire criminals and illegal aliens to patrol our streets. Sounds like another case of the government planning to create a crisis that further down the road it can fix with even more government. And how has Chicago fared since the implementation of these recommendations? Well, murder rate is up 72%, while shootings are up 88%. Unfortunately, it's the most vulnerable in Chicago who many times are the ones to get hurt. The inner city has been whipped into a frenzy that pits people against people, race against race, and citizens against authority. It's not unlike what we see across the country, splitting Americans into population segments according to race, class, education level, religion, etc. All to get the American public into asking for solutions from government, when many times it's government or politicians that are at the core of the problem. But by all means, let's not let a crisis go to waste. And with the polar opposite treatment given to Clinton and Trump, the media certainly is heeding the call to divide people. It's time to unite Americans instead of dividing them. At the John Birch Society, we are uniting Americans under the banner of the Constitution. Visit jbs.org to find out more. And if you like what we do, then be sure to share this video with your family and friends. And until next week, we'll see you then.